On today's show, Zack Hyman's Stanley Cup playoffs are over. Are the Boston Bruins closer to hiring a head coach? And the 6th overall pick from the 2023 draft is signed in Utah. Is it time for them to exit this perennial rebuild?
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome inside this Wednesday, May 28th edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers who make us your first listen Monday through Friday here on Locked On NHL, where we have different local experts every day breaking things down. We also have NHL Game Night that comes out after all the action each and every night. It's been an awesome addition to the network, so make sure you go check them out. They get takes right after the game from each local host with their own takes sprinkled in. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. It's a Battle of Ontario edition, as always, on Wednesdays. I'm with Mike DiStefano from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs, and former Leaf Zack Hyman is done for the playoffs. A important piece of the puzzle for the Edmonton Oilers. Took an awkward hit from Mason Marchment in the last game, and he has gotten surgery, and that means it's all but over for him this season.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Like Hyman, he's such an energy player for the Edmonton Oilers, and he plays in all, different positions, kills penalties. He's on their power play, plays in the top six. So they're clearly going to feel this injury. And it's unfortunate because Hyman is such a good dude, great guy. And this is feeling like it's another trip to the Stanley Cup Finals for the Oilers. And, he would have loved to take part in that and been a big part of, potentially leading, ending the cup drought for Canada if Edmonton can get it done. And he would have really, really took pride in that. And now probably not going to be able to. Did they disclose exactly what the injury was? Like just upper body for now? You would think once they announce that, he's doing surgery and he's done for the year, that they would have just told us. Like, why they got to keep things so close to the vest for this?
Yeah, when it's the season, I understand, but there's pushback after what happened last night where Evan Bouchard gave a little two-hander on the way off the ice to Roope Hintz's foot. Of course, Hintz missed a game in this series due to a foot injury that was suffered on another slash from Darnell Nurse. But yeah, nothing's been said of what the injury is, and we're not doctors here, but from watching the play, it just looks like an awkward collision where Hyman's trying to get his hands up to protect himself from a kind of a side angle hit from Marchment, and it looks like he gets his wrist or something in the hands, and just sucks, man. And you mentioned playing Florida. Some people might forget that Zack Hyman was a Florida Panthers draft pick way back when, so it would be an extra serving of revenge if he could have gotten it done. Now, Zack Hyman, solid playoff so far. 5 goals, 11 points, plus 10 in 15 games. Not quite the output he had last playoffs where he had 16 goals in 25 games. But they're going to have their depth tested now. And their depth's been awesome. Like, don't get me wrong. Corey Perry's been outrageously productive this postseason. Evander Kane's had some big moments for them as well. Even Trent Fredericks had some good moments in this postseason. But Zack Hyman, he's the straw that stirs the drink outside of the big three forwards in McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins.
We just look at how many goal scorers that they have to this point. And, last night when Leon Draisaitl scored, they're like, oh, playoff or Oilers leading 7th goal of the playoffs. I'm thinking, that's the high, 7 goals. Like, they're a game away from the Stanley Cup final, and their leading goal scorer only has 7 tucks at this point. And it's just a testament to the amount of depth that they've accumulated. Like, Evan Bouchard's got 6, Corey Perry has 6, Nuge has 5, Hyman 5, Connor Brown 5, Evander Kane's got 4. Adam Henrique has 4. Janmark's got a couple. Kasperi Kapanen's got a couple. Like they've
2
got
goals in
goals.
6 games for Kapanen.
Yeah, right. So, a big overtime winner to send them through. And then, one of them, the other night he got an empty netter last night, but still, it's just the amount of goal scorers that they have right now is unbelievable. And I think that's what you're banking on. Now that Zack Hyman's hurt, like it's got to be a next man up mentality. And they've been able to prove that they can get scoring all throughout the lineup, and it's given teams fits, especially here in Dallas. Like they just, all right, sure, they may be doing a good job of limiting McDavid as much as possible, but here comes Connor Brown. Oh, here comes the Leon line. Oh no, here comes Evander Kane, Corey Perry. Like it's just a never-ending wave, it feels like, for Edmonton right now, and that's got to continue if they're not going to have Zack Hyman available for the remainder of the playoffs.
And not to mention Connor Brown missed game 4 this series as well after taking a massive hit from Alex Petrovic in game 3. So they're going to have even more depth tested. Does Jeff Skinner get his second career playoff game at this point? Victor Arvidsson came in after being a healthy scratch for a few games because Connor Brown was out of the lineup, but they also may have the opportunity to go 11-7 because Matthias Ekholm is close but did not play, even though it was kind of rumored that he might be back for game 4.
How much money are they spending on those 2 players? I gotta go check that out really quickly and just see what their cap situation is like, because those were like kind of the 2 bigger additions that they made this offseason, no? Like Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson, and they didn't really do a whole lot else outside of that. They're paying Arvidsson $4 million, and then they're paying Jeff Skinner, I think it's 3.5, if I'm not mistaken.
3
million. Okay, so $7 million between the 2 players. Like, and both of them have been non-factors in the postseason. They've elected to go with the guys who brought them there last year over the 2 newbies. Like they were expected to be big top 9, top 6 contributors to the team, and they're like, no, we're gonna stick with Connor Brown, we're gonna stick with Corey Perry, we're gonna stick with, like, these guys just continue to go to the well with what worked last year, and it's gotten them pretty damn close. But just imagine if they would have gotten it right with those 2 players, or maybe you take that $7 million, could have allocated that elsewhere. How great that team could be or could have been, I suppose.
Did you see the graphic that Sportsnet put up last night with Corey Perry?
Which one?
Well, this is just outrageous. The organizations with the most playoff games since the year 2000. And I should also mention Corey Perry started his NHL career in 2006 would be his first playoffs. Corey Perry has 230 career NHL playoff games. The Pittsburgh Penguins have the most of any organization since 2000, and they've played 11 less than Corey Perry.
It's wild. The guy's in the playoffs every year. He's going deep. He's got to the Cup final, like 6 or the last 7 years or something stupid like that.
I don't know if he missed one, but other than that, I click Carey Price's. Corey Perry, Carey Price, same, but very, very different. No, in the playoffs, he went to the Cup final last year with Edmonton, lost in the first round with Tampa the year before. That's what it was. But then had made 3 straight finals with 3 different teams the year before that. Tampa, Montreal, and Dallas. Lost in 2 of them. And then did he? No, Tampa. Did Tampa win in 2022? No, it was Colorado.
Yeah.
So he lost in 3 straight finals.
Yeah.
Yikes. He's got his cup from 2007, probably the cup that I want to forget the least, but that was early on in his career. And now he's in a situation where 230, what's the most NHL playoff games all time? He's got to be sneaking up on the top there. I got it here. Where do you think he ranks all-time playoff games in NHL history?
Well, you got to think there's a lot of those dynasties that were going deep into Cup finals through the 80s. So I would think that you probably would look at players like that in that realm, but he's probably got to be top 15,
higher,
top 10.
Higher.
Top 5.
7th all time.
7th.
And when he steps on the ice tomorrow night, he'll be in a tie with Guy Carbonneau for 6th most in NHL history. The only
you got those dynasty teams back in like the 80s and 70s that I'm assuming are the guys who take up most of the oxygen on that list.
I'll go through the list in just a moment, but if the Stanley Cup Finals is not a sweep, so let's say it's at least 5 games, Corey Perry plays them all, and let's say that the Oilers win in the next game, game 5 to win, that would mean that he has at least 6 more games left in him. He would be tied with Mark Messier for 3rd most playoff games in NHL history. The list gets wider at the top. Chris Chelios is number 1 with 266. Nick Lidstrom, 263, all with one franchise, which I think makes it even more impressive.
Detroit was a dynasty there throughout the 90s and early 2000s, so that makes sense.
Mark Messier, Claude Lemieux, Scott Stevens, Guy Carbonneau. That's the only players with more playoff games than Corey Perry. Super impressive list for the Worm, who has been contributing 6 goals, 9 points in 15 games for the Oilers. And they're finding different ways to win. And Stuart Skinner has stabilized as well. So we're looking at an Oilers team that's going to be very hungry to maul the Cats and get some revenge. For more on this, go check out our Locked On Oilers, Locked On Panthers podcast. And again, NHL Game Night has all the ins and outs of last night's game immediately following it. But a different look now going forward without Zack Hyman for the Edmonton Oilers. Are the Boston Bruins going to have a new look behind the bench? The answer is yes, of course, unless they go back to Joe Sacco. Joe or Jeff? Joe Sacco, right? Joe Sacco, Joe Sakic. Very similar, but very different. There's the theme of this first segment.
Different. That's right.
Very much so. But they could be going off the board a player who used to play for the Boston Bruins. We'll get into some reports that were surfacing last night. And then Dmitry Simashev has signed his NHL contract with the Utah Hockey Club, the Mammoth contract, you could say. But it's time for them to compete.
No longer the Utah Hockey Club, Ross. They have a name, and we should use it.
I mean, one of their jerseys just says Utah. Are they a hockey club from Utah?
I mean, technically, every team has one. The New Jersey Devils have one that says just New Jersey on it. We gonna start referring to them as the New Jersey Hockey Club?
Stay tuned for more. You listen to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a great source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. I got some right here. I call them oysters of the tree because you just crack these babies open and they are a delicious snack that gets you all fueled up for the day. They are one of the highest protein nuts going. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, which gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. They also have the no shells variety, which is the perfect grab and go snack. You can also use the no shell variety easily in recipes. You don't have to sit there and crack them open over and over again. So whether you're snacking or making something, a quick protein boost is there for you. My go-to is the lightly salted, but they got lots of flavors, and you'll love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch. And the in-shell ones are just a complete classic. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back. Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, not only to Locked On NHL, but we have 30 plus podcasts, all with local experts breaking down the off season for most and playoffs for those 4 teams still lucky enough to be dancing every single night. It's been a fantastic playoffs for the National Hockey League, but other teams, they got business to take care of, including the Boston Bruins, who had a disappointing fall from grace after being a perennial playoff team. They finished 5th last in the league. And to get another slap in the face, they fell 2 spots in the NHL draft lottery. They hold the 7th overall selection at the NHL draft, which is coming up in 1 day less than a month, June 27th in Los Angeles, the NHL draft, and all teams want a head coach by then. But Mikey, it looks like the Bruins may be closing in on their choice.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be, kicking it old school a little bit and grabbing former Bruin Marco Sturm is zeroing in to be their new head coach. There's a report that apparently Mitch Love is also in consideration, but a couple of reports have come out suggesting that Marco Sturm could be the guy. He's been with the head coach of the Ontario Reign for the last few years. He was, on the bench with the LA Kings for a couple of seasons as well. So, he's got some coaching experience and a solid team out there in LA. They've had a lot of success. So makes some sense. He's ready to kind of make that next jump. And you got to kind of like it. The Bruins, there's been a lot of talk in the really forever that it's an old boys club in the NHL and they just recycle head coaches. This would at least be, fresh blood, right? He's never been an NHL head coach. He's one of the, a former player who's trying to make that transition behind the bench. And, we'll see what comes of it. He's had some success as a coach in the American League, and we'll see what he can do with Edmonton, assuming that gets kind of locked in at some point here.
Yeah, Boston. And,
Boston.
Former Bruin, but not only that, 3 years as head coach of the Ontario Reign. Before that, he spent 4 seasons behind the bench for the LA Kings as an assistant coach. He does have head coaching experience internationally as well. He was the head coach of Team Germany at the 2018 Olympics, of course, one that did not feature NHL players. He was the head coach at the World Championships, and he has been also for the World Championships 3 times for Team Germany, going back to 2015. So feels like definitely time for an opportunity for Marco Sturm, who had a great playing career as well in the National Hockey League, 938 games played between the Bruins, the San Jose Sharks, the Washington Capitals, Vancouver Canucks, and Florida Panthers towards the end of his career. But we'll see if that is the direction the Boston Bruins are going to go.
Yeah, and quickly, I'm just reading up, or I was reading up before the show, Fluto Shinsawa, who is a great beat reporter for the Boston Bruins, and in his piece when he was writing about the 2 options here, Marco Sturm and Mitch Love, noted that both of those 2 coaches come from a developmental background. So I find that kind of interesting that they're choosing to go the developmental route. Maybe makes you think that the Boston Bruins are thinking about not tinkering but taking a couple steps back and reloading with some younger pieces before kind of getting back into cup contention mode like they'd been the last decade.
If that's the case, they got even more work than I originally thought this summer, because they're only 1 year removed from giving Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov those enormous long-term free agent contracts, but they do have David Pastrnak locked up until 2031. So when you have David Pastrnak, the expectation should be that you're a good hockey team. The Bruins also have a ton of money. They got $26.2 million in cap space this summer.
Or Ross, you unload David Pastrnak and get plenty of futures to truly get yourself set for a full-fledged rebuild.
Well, he would have to be on board with that because he's got a full no-move clause. And
all his friends are gone. No Marchand, no Bergeron, no Zdeno Chara. Outside of Charlie McAvoy, the entire core has been pillaged from, when they were, shaking and rocking through the 2010s, right? They won their cup and then they went and they went back to a cup final in 18-19. And since then, they have not been, had that much success as a team. So I do wonder if it could be a bumpier road than Bruins fans are expecting moving forward. Again, I'm not suggesting that they're going to trade Pastrnak or they should trade him, but I wonder if they decide to kind of scorched earth rebuild, you could get a lot of futures and a lot of big pieces for David Pastrnak.
Pastrnak is 29 years old, coming off his 3rd straight 100-plus point season. The Utah Hockey Club's looking for a 100-point season as a team. a team that has been rebuilding for as long as I can remember. But do they have the pieces to finally get it done? We'll have that conversation next after the news that they have signed Dmitry Simashev, the 6th overall pick in the 2023 draft. That's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Welcome back. Locked On NHL, your team every day. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. I'm with Mike DiStefano over at Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. And I want to talk about the Utah Mammoth because this team has so many good pieces and they're starting to get to that age, especially their forwards, where they should be taking the next step. Is it realistic to expect playoffs for Utah next season?
Oh, I think so. I thought last year, it was reasonable to accept. I thought the last few years, it's been reasonable to have that expectation. But specifically last year, I thought they made some big time moves to go out and shore up that defense. Like they brought in John Marino, they brought in Mikhail Sergachev, they gave Sean Dursey the big deal. They brought in, Ian Cole on a 1-year deal. I think it was a 2-year deal actually to insulate him and give him, give this team a little bit of veteran presence. And then you were just hoping that you got, that next level out of the Dylan Gunthers of the world, of the Matthias Michellis. You hoping that Logan Cooley starts to turn into that star stud that they all thought he was going to be when he was drafted in the top 5 a couple years back, right? Full season of Josh Doan, right? So there's some pieces here that I think that the Utah organization likes and hopes can continue to move forward. So I think that they should definitely be on playoff watch. Whether or not it's considered a failure if they don't get there, I think is, probably worth a conversation. But I think that this is a team that could be very active. I think this free agency though. Like you think about it, they've got some good players like Clayton Keller, great player, all-star. Dylan Gunther, going to be a future, yearly all-star. I like Logan Cooley a lot. I think that he's going to be, an all-star level player, but does feel like they're missing another big piece up front to kind of bring it all together. So I would expect if this is the season that the Mammoth get it done, and it seems like their owner, Ryan Smith, is willing to dump as much money as possible into this organization to make them succeed. It feels as though, this is an off season where they could go shopping and they could get some pieces to kind of bring everything together.
And the Utah Jazz obviously struggling in the NBA, but Ryan Smith, as the owner of both, could probably see that as a bit of an opportunity to get some more hockey fans, not to take away from his other product, but also there's a void in the market right now of a really successful team. And you look at Seattle getting to the second round of the playoffs in their second season. You look at the success, obviously, that Vegas had going to the Cup final in their inaugural season. Like, that's how you build the fan base, is immediate success. And you can only sell hope for so long. And that hope has already gotten them all those players that you mentioned that are contributing. How many of those guys were drafted and developed by the Coyotes and now the Mammoth? A ton of them. And they made that the trade to me that signals that they want to go in the right direction was when they gave up a second round pick, JJ Moser, and went out and got 2-time Stanley Cup champion Mikhail Sergachev, who had a solid season. Now, is it worth $8.5 million? That can be debated, but he still had 15 goals. He had a 50-plus point season. And there's obviously every single player on that team had to adjust to a new lifestyle, a new city, new home, getting settled. And I don't think that's lost. Not only that, how about the road trip? Didn't they start the season on a huge road trip because they didn't have the rink ready in time? It just felt like everything was moving a million miles an hour around the organization.
There were a lot of injuries throughout the year too. Not to make excuses up for Utah, but there were some big, like John Marino missed some time. I'm pretty sure Sergachev missed a little bit of time as well, if I'm not mistaken. He definitely didn't play all 82, I don't believe. So there were some injuries there as well. Some guys who had some down years. Like, I don't think Lawson Krause had the season that he was hoping to have himself, and he's been a big part of that organization for quite some time. So you're right. I think the fact that everyone was in a kind of a new spot, maybe, it'll take a year for everyone to really get comfortable with their new surroundings, and they've had that year. And now we'll see moving forward, can they really start to take next steps as a hockey club? There's a lot of new young pieces still to come too, right? Like you mentioned that they signed Dmitry Simashev, right? Good young defenseman who can come and help with that core. He just signed his ELC today. TJ Ginla, is going to try and make the team out of camp next year. He was their first round pick last year. Was he 6th overall? Son of Jerome Ginla. So, he's obviously has NHL aspirations and he could help kind of bring another element to that team, along with maybe a new crop of free agents. So, yeah, I think this is the season. This is the year. I'm going to put my without even seeing how the offseason goes, who they bring in, what trades are made, drafts, whatever. I'm planting my flag that I have so much faith in Ryan Smith as an owner, and I have a lot of faith in that organization that they will get it done and they will make the necessary moves to get this team into the postseason in 2026. I truly believe that that's going to happen.
I like the positivity. They were a team that I went to FanDuel often on whenever they were plus 150 or higher, and I'd throw a couple shekels because I do think they have the talent to be better than their record showed. However, do you believe in Kirill Vejmelka, who they believe in enough to give him a contract extension? He has his first season with a save percentage over 900, and it just barely snuck over that line. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, that might be a spot that they need to improve on, right? Like you think about they've got some cap space, they've got a lot of picks and prospects. Like this is a spot where they can go out and try and find a goalie that could be their goaltender of the future, right?
Well, they've got one who's very, very young and won't be ready yet. But they drafted Michael Hrabal in the second round a couple of years ago, and he was one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in college hockey last year. 924 save percentage with UMass. 6'7" goaltender, but he's 20 years old. So you're not going to put that on his shoulders just now. I honestly wonder if a little part of the Vejmelka extension, as long as it is the native connection, both from Czechia, Hrabal, and Vejmelka, to help him adjust there. But they obviously have to believe in him as a goalie too. But I wonder, because Connor Ingram's in the final year of his contract, making 1.95. He's had good stretches. Obviously dealt with a lot off the ice, had to take a couple leaves of absence, and we hope that everything's all right with his personal situation. But on the ice, like, he had some good moments, but he also had some not so great moments in terms of finishing the year with an 882 save percentage in 22 games. 907 the year before in 50 games with Arizona. Probably not wanting him to play 50 games in the NHL, but the goaltending to me is the biggest question mark, along with the Central Division. Like, I think if they're in the Pacific Division, it might be a little bit of an easier road. And I know that they're going to be competing for a wild card spot against those Pacific teams no matter what, but they're going to have to play more games against their own division, which includes Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas, 3 teams that aren't going anywhere. Minnesota is finally out from purgatory with the Ryan Suter, Zach Parise buyouts off. They're going to be busy this offseason trying to convince Kirill Kaprizov that he should sign long-term there. They're going to want to be competitive. The Blues finished the year as the best team in the NHL from the 4 nations. They almost won against the President's Trophy winners. It was a miraculous comeback for Winnipeg to tie that game, 2 goals in the last 5 minutes, and then winning in double overtime in Game 7. Like, Nashville won't be as bad as they were, you don't think, next season. It's a tough division to be in for Utah.
It is a tough division. It certainly is, and there's no getting around that, obviously. But I still think that it's a team that's going to compete. And just to quickly go back to Vejmelka, I was curious to see where he stacked up. In terms of goal saved above expectation, because I do recall him being in the positive in that space. And he did. He saved 14.2 goals above expectation this year, which ranked him 13th among goalies who started at least half their team's games, for an average of 0.253 goals per expectation, which again ranked in the top 15 in the NHL among all starters in across the league. So not too bad. Yeah, save percentage on unblocked shots for him this year at 5-on-5, 954. So pretty solid when he can see the puck. So Kirill Vejmelka had a pretty good season, I would say, for the Utah Hockey Club. But again, he's got to kind of take that next step and go from good to great to get this team to the next level.
And Dmitry Simashev, the reason we're having this conversation, he just finished up his career in the KHL with a championship. Now, he was in a very much depth role with Yaroslav Lokomotiv, 21 games in the playoffs, averaging about 10 minutes per night and only contributing 1 assist. However, the 20-year-old defenseman is 6'5", 203 pounds, and can skate like the wind. He was one of my favorites pre-draft, and we had him kind of like a lot of the experts had him like mid first round pick. Utah said, no, we love this player. We're going to get him.
Can't teach size. Can't teach size.
Especially with that skating ability. And it might not end there. They might have his Yaroslavl teammate, 12th overall pick from the 2023 draft. Same draft. This was the pick they acquired from Ottawa for Jacob Chikrin. Daniil Boot, who's also a mammoth.
Mammoth,
6'6", 215-pound forward who may be signing his entry-level contract sooner rather than later as well. So they're adding size to Utah, no doubt.
Well, you look at this, you look at the way the D core is now shaping up here. You've got Sergachev, you've got Olimata, and then you add in Dmitry Simashev, right? There's your left side. And on the right side, you've got Sean Dursey, John Marino, and Michael Kesserling, who is an underrated player. A lot of people don't. He's an underrated player. Go look at his underlying numbers. Michael Kesserling, great third pair defenseman. Could be pushing for a top 4 role at some point. So defensively, I like where they're at. And then Ian Cole and UC Valimaki are there as well as, depth pieces to try and compete. Right, competition breeds the best in people. So I like what they got going on defense up front. We like a few pieces there. Keller, Gunther.
Gunther to me scoring. Like, how many do you have this year? Because I think him scoring. What do you have this year? 27,
30. I think nearly 30 goals.
27 in 70 games. I don't think him getting 40 is out of the question this year.
I don't think it's out of the question either. I think so. You like if Logan Cooley can really take that next step. Right, and that power play can really get cooking. I think there's a strong possibility of Gunther hitting the 40 mark this year, and that'll go a long way for this Utah hockey club.
Elite shooter Dylan Gunther in his age 19, 20, and 21 seasons, which he's played so far, accumulating more games in each season. He scores on 13.5% of his shots. That's pretty good. He's only going to get stronger. He's a stud in the making. So if you're the Utah Mammoth fan, you're going to be watching Dylan Guenther score a lot of goals coming up, especially as his centerman Logan Cooley continues to develop, the 2nd overall pick back in the 2022 NHL draft. All right, Mike, any more final thoughts for you? What's going on Locked On Leafs?
Locked On Leafs is we're just breaking down what went on. We kind of asked the question of whether or not this past season was a waste or a step in the right direction. So we pondered that question on today's podcast, and going forward tomorrow, we'll start to look ahead now as we look ahead to next year and how this team can finally get over the hump. What change are we about to see? Obviously, Mitch Marner and his pending free agency is a big topic of conversation as well.
All right. We're looking forward to following those storylines. Over at Locked On Senators, we are looking at how Ottawa can improve through trade and free agency, but trades, it feels like, is more likely.
One more last thing before we go. It does appear that Sam Reinhart and Nico Mikkola and AJ Greer will play tonight for the Florida Panthers in Game 5. Do they get it done? Do they down the Canes and book their 3rd straight ticket to the Cup final tonight, Ross?
Oh, I think they do. They already had to make the trip back to Raleigh. They may as well leave with the series in hand.
I'm with you.
And that's a team that could use, I don't know how long the rest would be, but they could use a few extra days off after going 7 against Toronto the round before. And clearly they're banged up. I know you mentioned 3 names. There's no way Matthew Tkachuk's playing at 100%. They could use a little extra time.
Yeah, absolutely they could. Although I don't know how much extra time they could get because Edmonton could wrap things up tomorrow too.
All right. Well, are we getting a rematch? We'll find out soon. We'll have that answer by the time we talk to you next Wednesday here on Locked On NHL. For now, we'll pass it on to NHL Game Night later tonight. So make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms to get the latest. We appreciate you every dayers making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.